if if God is a one half of a dichotomy, God and atheism, doubt, and the bit where they talk about doubting Thomas in the Bible. Oh no, we don't do that. Oh, we've got it in the Bible, so therefore that's great because we've mentioned it. But of course we never go there. No, it's a dichotomy. Doubt and God. The dichotomies don't work like, oh, we've discovered it's a dichotomy, and therefore we are now forever and eternally, as long as we understand it, in the middle between those dichotomies. No, a dichotomy is constantly functioning. In other words, sometimes there is a situation in which a monism is key. We need a monism. When do we ever need a monism? When the internet takes over. Boom. I mean, here I am on the internet, but anyway, you know, can the internet destroy itself or escape itself? Every art form becomes popularized, and as they say, you shouldn't drink from the mainstream because it's polluted. So yeah, whatever someone does becomes successful, and thus other people copy it, and it becomes polluted. So it's not about, am I making a video? Is this video right and is that video wrong? No, it's about the time. I'm making this video now. It's good. I'm making the same video or exactly the same kind of video in 5 years' time when this idea has become accepted, the challenge has been seen, and the video is now mainstream. It's polluting because it's not challenging something else that needs to be challenged. At the moment, this is the challenge we need to do. In the future, it's just not challenging anything because that challenge has been achieved. We need another challenge. That implies something interesting, which is that YouTube podcasters were challenging something good, speaking something good, and are now less so, and it's becoming polluted. And you might say movies have become polluted. Movies as an art form is. They used to say, in that film, the holiday, the old guy says, the one who says, yeah, I told them to put "here's looking at you, kid," put "kid" on the end of "here's looking at you." And Casablanca, sweet character, I quite like that line. "Here's looking at you, kid." So much better. Yeah, okay, it's good, lovely little line. He says, "Oh, there used to be a big thing. Somebody released a movie every week. Now there's one every 10 seconds." Yeah, you look on the remote romance channel on Freeview in the UK, and there's a romance film in the ilk of When Harry Met Sally on absolute constant play. There's one new one. Oh, a romance movie with this theme, a romance movie with that theme. It's like, what has happened to the movie industry? And you try to watch them and you're like, it's the kind of good line. Is the premise of interest? Vaguely. You're in the mood for a rom-com. You watch one and you're like, oh, I'm just tired now. But occasionally you watch one and you're like, it was okay. It was okay. I got through it. It was actually a good movie. The scenario was actually, I found that actually quite interesting. Anyway, what was my point? Yeah, apart from the point that I'm now making a internet YouTube thing, and that I'm destroying YouTube at the same time. We need a monism. We need God. We need to understand that the world is not YouTube. The world will always survive beyond YouTube. We will see YouTube for what it is. We will isolate it and see that it is doing something else. An absolute exists outside of that. We will survive, and we will survive YouTube and what it's doing to us. In the future we'll laugh at this. Of course we know that these people who are going for ratings are not reality. They are an artifice. You'll laugh at me, but right now people don't kind of realise it's an artifice. Somebody who makes a video, they twist things because they say, "Oh, I'm terribly challenging," and then you're watching it and you're like, "No, you've just done something that's complete clickbait. You've just incited some opinion against someone with bad evidence, and then you're going, oh, I'm terribly challenging and I'm terribly original and I'm saving the world." No, you're not. You're clickbait. You're actually a dark person. You're trying to twist my mind. We need escape from it, and we need to understand that YouTube isn't reality. YouTube is an artifice. It follows clicks. It follows figures, viewing figures. I'm thinking of a guy called Moon, and I think Moon might talk about movies or something, and then he has a sub channel called Moon Reel and another one called Moon something else. And Moon Reel is commenting grittily, oh, I'm so gritty, on real things in the real world. And what was it? Oh, Conan is a good late night show. A lot of it's American, because unlike the others, his old model, he says it's an old model, but it's working still. His model is a bit like Joe Rogan. I think he might be associated with Joe Rogan because he says "we" when he says something about Joe Rogan. We, not to attack Joe Rogan. To attack Joe Rogan, he's just done some very odd health product. Anyway, yeah. So he's saying Conan is a bit like Joe Rogan. It's a sort of, he wants people to actually be able to talk and be themselves. I won't explain Joe Rogan, look him up. So he's going into all these things like, oh, he wanted Norm Macdonald on there, even though Norm was piling into any potential scandal that he had no proof of or had been dismissed in court, and was attacking it as if it was some kind of global corruption. Maybe it was, or maybe the court just said he wasn't guilty, and everybody was saying it's so clearly rubbish, and maybe it was rubbish. But the fact is, it's not proven that he did it. It's not, and whether this is proof or not, it's not a justice system that is said he is. All that happens if a justice system says it is, that it's legally allowed to say that it's true. Anyway, O.J. Simpson, everybody's like, he definitely did it. Norm Macdonald's piling in for years, apparently, going, he's a murderer, because he wants to sort of shock, and in the sense of he wants to have some righteous left, maybe shock, like a righteousness of, he wants some victory to beat the bad man. Maybe he's right. Of course, everybody says O.J. Simpson clearly did it, and that this is a terrible corruption, that he was off. It's basically among kangaroo courts and the court of public opinion, that one seems fairly clear. And I hate kangaroo courts, but I don't quite hate that one so much. Anyway, so Conan is so brilliant because he demanded that Norm Macdonald should be allowed to stay on his show, and he nearly lost his career and did lose his Tonight Show slot, and the whole thing with Jay Leno is still being mentioned, and those in the know that it was something to do with Norm Macdonald and O.J. Simpson. Crazy story. And yet this guy is just like finding bitter kind of things that he can say about people. This Moon Reel guy. and then claiming he's terribly righteous. And it's like, you're not righteous, you're clickbait. You just made it look like somebody is a real asshole. You totally put dirt on somebody's life and career with poor evidence, and now you're claiming you're terribly um, passionate about righteousness. It's like, oh man, these are dark people, and the world is confused because nobody quite realizes that we have to say very clearly. It's YouTube, it's an artifice. YouTube is artifice, popular. YouTube's designed, you can see what's designed to be hitting all the right buttons and touching the subjects that get clicks, and so the ratings of the whole YouTuber or YouTuber team goes up. And such an industry, and it feels like reality is dark and full of, I can't understand what's good and what's wholesome. Yeah, but we will, in the words of a situationist, difficult group, we will detorn them. Everything gets detorned. It's a bit of a socialist idea, a socialist sort of sense of destroying capitalism and all its alienation, which in this case is quite a relevant critique, to be honest. Yeah, situationists are a difficult group, as I say. I'm specifically referring to situationists here, not to all of the left, all of socialism. So, yeah, I started it by saying, in a dichotomy, sometimes a monism comes to play. We will escape this reality that is not clear. Clarity will emerge out of reality being cut up and not given to us in good ways. Does that make sense? That's a sort of monism. That there is. Can we? Be careful with our words. There is truth. I'm trying to explain something. Don't quote me on this and saying Adam says there is truth. There is truth in the sense that there is monism. There is monism in the sense that there is truth, and it's a dichotomy. There you go. I think that explains it. When I say there is truth, I'm talking about there is monism, and monism is a dichotomy. Does that make sense? I think so. And sometimes that monism comes into play, and it's like, very like Plato, darkness will try to emerge out of chaos, the Greek, religious idea of the god of chaos and being defeated. Chaos is lack of involvement, chaos is lack of care, not looking after each other. And goodness, chaos, badness, by which he kind of means chaos, cannot survive. Only goodness survives. This is, if you're not a Platonist, if you're a philosopher who is part of the Anglophone, English-speaking, American-British kind of Bertrand Russell type school, you hate Plato. You were like, no, we reject Plato. We're all now Aristotelians. I don't get it, but I think that is an argument right there for Plato. This idea that it's not just a sort of simplistic two colours. One of them is black, happens to be black. One of them happens to be white. No, blackness will proliferate, but goodness wins. You cannot let badness lie. It must be challenged. It will proliferate, but goodness always wins. And you might even say, thus, goodness always wins. Humans will always learn and intervene. Difficult in terms of intervening. We get into a left-wing, right-wing thing. Intervention can be associated with a sort of state-level cult control, and lack of intervention can be associated with left-wing laissez-faire. you see, when we get into this whole left wing thing, is it laissez-faire? We think of, when okay, don't judge me as left wing or right wing, but when left wing people attack the right, they go, yeah, they're all fascists, they're all, it's autocracy, they're trying to control us, the church is controlling us morally, the, the um the Conservative Party in this country, old posh people want to impose their ideas and keep down the working class. Fair enough. Working class rights or working class liberation, great. But you get a very complex picture, in fact, because then you're basically saying right wing equals autocrats, religion, controlling, morality. Left wing equals laissez faire. Actually, it doesn't. Left wing doesn't equal laissez faire. Laissez faire is, you know, as these alt right people have managed to isolate, liberal, left wing and liberal are not necessarily the same thing. It becomes a complicated picture, and this whole dichotomy of your evil right wing and we're terribly compassionate left wing. You start realizing that the left wing has tried to claim the powerful territory of compassion and that we are the good party. And then you start getting into the subject and you're like, hang on, your simplistic idea of those people are autocratic and controlling and these people are left wing and good. No, the left wing isn't just laissez-faire. Laissez-faire and versus control is a dichotomy that doesn't really fit with left and right. To some extent, it's just a discussion that we need to have. How does laissez-faire fit with left? Tony Blair and, well, probably more like Gordon Brown rather than Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, put money from the city into a thing called, my brother-in-law worked for it, Early Start, not Easy Start, that starts an engine, Early Start or something, for an idea of making a better future by giving early mother and child period a strong basis and to be supported by society. To some extent, that's putting money into women and women having children in a way that is not very right wing. So even the mildest, Blairite left is a little bit against a sort of moral idea of marriage. So in that sense, you're empowering women, you're trusting women to say, we don't need to control women. We don't need to have a moral idea of marriage. So yeah, left equals laissez-faire. Yeah, to some extent it does. Left equals compassionate. The key example is the homeless. The left supports the homeless, and that extrapolates into the left supports the poorer people in society, ones who don't get a good diet even. These are the stats that you get that are just very shocking, really. And this is how this idea of the left as the compassionate, the way that the left claims the territory of the compassionate and the good, how that comes about. But is left laissez-faire? I'm not thinking just about how actual real life left-wing politicians in local and national government come out actually quite controlling. It's more that actually the deep theory, the deep policy isn't necessarily that laissez-faire. Investment, investment in infrastructure. I don't know. Why am I thinking of that? Big bridges or whatever. The left invests and the right sort of doesn't use public money. That's another dichotomy. Isn't it quite controlling to march in and sort of help everyone? I'm not finding the right words. There's something, quietly the right still holds an ideal with regards to less involvement by government. That sort of questions this idea that the government is always right, and it says no, the government is a flawed situation, and this over the top policy of as an overarching top down policy of give lots of money to the government gets involved. The sense of this sort of right wing that says this is against government power through money is a sort of thing that suggests, well, maybe the government isn't that pure. Maybe we need to critique the government and not say the government is perfect and beautiful, give it money, let them invest. Does that make any sense? So there's a sort of sense in which when you drill past the cliches of left and right, left isn't that laissez-faire. It doesn't fit totally with lack of control. It's involved. It's involved because it believes in money and investment and engagement, and that's in a way control. And there's a sort of doctrine of this anti-governmental power on the right that sort of quietly survives, that it is in a sense more laissez-faire. Anyway, it's confusing, is what I'm saying. You drill past the basic cliches of a left-right idea, and actually it's really not that. It's just, or at least it's very confusing. So we started with the YouTube, the internet, and how we need to have a sense that we won't be defeated by this blackening and muddying of truth, and that a sort of universal truth will always respond to whatever darkness comes its way. I can't remember how we then got onto the left. I think I was always trying to fill space. I've realised I've now got into way beyond my usual 14 minutes. I was inspired to talk about my situation as a being a YouTube, but am I somehow different? Can I be YouTube and undo YouTube? Can I be internet social media and undo social media? Can I be a pure sort of beam of truth through what is currently, it feels like a dangerous thing? Maybe I just have watched these people and I'm starting to get drawn into their world. I need to just stop. Obviously, as soon as you start talking about monism and dichotomy, the idea of God as a right-wing thing, and left as being antagonistic to the right wing, immediately comes up, and so that's perhaps, I can't even remember, I have to look back at how I started getting into the confusing elements of control versus laissez-faire, and whether that directly relates to the simple idea of left and right. Not quite sure how to end, because I need to know how I made that connection and therefore wrap it up. So I'm failing at that, and I'm on coming up 25 minutes. essentially all I wanted to do was touch on this darkness of the YouTube confusing clouds approaching and how we will see through. And yeah, well, there we go. We can simplify a conclusion by saying other clouds appear in the sense of dark, confused, simplistic ideas of left is laissez-faire and right is autocratic, uh, um, dictators controlling religion, controlling. Yeah, we will get to a place where that dichotomy becomes clear, and that we will then start to see how it flows from one to the other. Sometimes we need one, sometimes we need the other. And good governance will come out of that, in theory. Or we'll get to the next problem. But I just think we need to tackle these sort of things. Simplistic ideas in the populace of voting populace and the state level representative voting system of the state as just I just think people get so angry and pile in at the state level. We've got to change this by piling into the state level. I just think you haven't got a critical perspective. Oh, I'm going off on a tangent. I wanted to conclude on that sense of the dichotomy, the slightly confused product of this idea of very simple left and right, and the simple idea of a monism versus a chaotic or laissez-faire, non-moral, judgmental left.